Alright, we are back with yet another Final Fantasy VII Remake series news roundup where Naoki Hamaguchi is talking more about the game, including the nebulous connection between Advent Children in the Remake series, a very pivotal moment that Cloud will experience in Revelation and how it could be a little bit different, and also how streaming can affect games and the developers. We'll discuss all of that and more in today's video, so if any of that sounds cool to you, go ahead and hit that like button with a healing wind. We've been kind of brutal to the like button lately. I think it deserves a little bit of restoration. So just a heads up and spoiler warning, the footage I'll be using in today's video is essentially the entirety of the end of Rebirth. So if you haven't finished the game yet, or if you're new to the series, there will be visual spoilers as well as story spoilers based on what we discuss from Hamaguchi. And also, apologies for the repetitive B-roll. I haven't had a chance to sit down and capture some fresh footage for these videos, so I kind of just have to go back and use what I've already used in prior videos. So apologies if the visual stuff is very repetitive. I gotta work on that. But we start off first with, again, as I like to refer to it, that nebulous relationship between the Remake series and Advent Children in the original FF7. And this is coming to us from Jade King of The Gamer, who spoke to Hamaguchi recently. Hamaguchi goes on to say, "It's more accurate to consider Advent Children to be part of the original FF7's canon rather than the Remake series canon. This is because the Remake series has not yet been completed, and since we have not revealed how it will conclude at this stage, we don't believe it to be appropriate to share whether it's canon or not." And I think that's interesting because one thing that Hamaguchi and Nomura, the developers, have been saying for a very long time now is that the whole purpose of this remake series is to include all things FF7, from the OG game to the compilation, and you put it into a world where it feels more cohesive. And how he describes Advent Children here being part of OG FF7's canon is kind of how I view things. I'll go ahead and use the term timeline, but when I use timeline, I'm not talking about the story events of the games or the remake series. I just use timeline to give you guys a visual image of how I view these things. So we have Crisis Core, the original FF7, Advent Children, and Dirge of Cerberus. That's kind of like its own thing. The remake series, however, is very fascinating because it includes elements from all of those things. Zack is there, Cisne is there. We've seen Advent Children stuff like potentially fighting the Advent Children at the end of Remake. There's the iconography of Cloud and Aerith standing back to back in the White Void. There's little hidden things like Sephiroth stabbing Cloud, Zack, or Aerith in the way that he stabs Cloud in Advent Children the movie. Now, you could always boil some of these things down to cute little Easter eggs, which, is a possibility. But I like how Hamaguchi says in this quote, "We can't really reveal anything because Revelation's not done yet." And I think that's a very big thing that people need to keep in mind. And I bring that up because apparently, and this has only come to my, attention recently, but apparently it's a very hot button topic, controversial issue online of how you view this remake series. Do you view it as something as Maximilian would refer to it, a spicy remake? Or do you think it's a sequel? And people take this stuff seriously. I'm talking like gang warfare here. I've even been caught up in the crossfire myself because I'm one of those people who leans more towards the camp of, yeah, I think this could be a sequel. We could be dealing with a post-Advent Children Sephiroth here. And I think that because of what I've experienced playing Rebirth, Remake, as well as Ever Crisis, that first Soldier storyline directly connects back to the Remake series because we see Sephiroth on the edge of creation. And I bring all of this stuff up because it's important for all of us as fans to remember none of us have the answers. None of us know what's going to happen. The only people who know are the developers. And I think that is so fascinating that they have managed to create a series of games that pays homage to the original FF7 but adds just enough new stuff, twists and turns to get people questioning if they are remembering things correctly, if they can predict what's around the corner. It's like, hold on, we were supposed to go to this location, but we went here instead. Or this didn't play out how I remembered it in the original. That to me is fascinating. And that is why I make these videos. And I think that's why a lot of us talk about this stuff, with people who are much smarter than me who theory craft. Again, I don't consider myself a theory crafter. You gotta be smart to do that. I can barely speak into a microphone most days. So I just spitball and talk about stuff because I think it's fascinating, and there's so many layers to these characters and their story that we have yet to see the revelation for, which we will hopefully see in part 3. And I think it's important for people to remember that this is supposed to just be for fun. And I think some people maybe take this too seriously. And if you view it as it's a sequel, then you're not a real fan, or you're an idiot, or vice versa. So you just chill out, people. Have fun. Talk about it. Theorize. But, at the end of the day, we won't have our answers until Revelation comes out and we all finish it. And that's when we'll learn what this remake series truly is. But I think it's pretty cool that Hamaguchi's like, yeah, I can't really give you a definitive answer because you got to play the game, because it's a huge spoiler. So how they talk about this trilogy, how they market it, they do have to walk a very fine line of what the relationship between the remake series is to the OG events of FF7, including, the compilation. Now, that kind of lends itself to the next quote from Hamaguchi within that same interview, where he talks more about the ending and whether or not that ending will be kind of different. He says, "If you were to ask me whether I've been strongly driven to conclude such a beloved story in a different manner than fans would expect, I'd have to say, honestly, that's not necessarily the case. Ultimately, I believe how it's received is up to each individual player." And again, that's a little bit nebulous because we don't know the relationship between the remake series and OG FF7 with Advent Children. Now, for me, because I fall into the camp of I think this is a sequel, I think the ending of what this trilogy is going to be is, I believe how Subtext referred to it as a synthesis, right? It's going to be basically what this entire remake series' goal was, an amalgamation of everything that came before it. And I think that's what the ending will be. An ending where Cloud is finally learning to be happy and let go of the things that are weighing him down. Sephiroth is beaten for realsies. The Earth is recovering. No one is sick. They're able to live happy, healthy lives. But that also comes with trade-offs. Things like the fact that Aerith and Zack are probably going to stay dead. Because some of the big story themes of FF7 have to deal with life and loss and grieving that loss, but eventually coming to accept it. And I think that's what's really interesting, is that when everything is said and done, this could be an incredibly beautiful, mature, poignant story about all of those things. The players are grieving the loss of something. Everyone on this cast has lost something, and we see them wrestle with that loss. They grieve, but eventually they'll come to accept it. And one of those things that the characters will have to accept is that Aerith is gone, and she can't be brought back. And I think that transfers to a meta-narrative as well for the player of, we love Aerith, we wish she could come back, but that's probably not in the cards. And from a character standpoint, Aerith is not the type of character that would want to cheat death, or come back from the dead, or be alive in a different world. She very much believes in the natural order of things, and cheating death or coming back would be wrong to her. She literally tells that to Sephiroth. Why? Because Sephiroth is someone who would want to come back, who has come back, who has cheated death, has straight up told Cloud, I will never be a memory, and has always found a way to come back. He might even potentially want to create a world where nobody dies and he is the ruler of it. That's the exact opposite of what Aerith believes, and she has called Sephiroth out on that plenty of times, straight up telling him, you are wrong. Everything about you is wrong. So as lovely as it would be to have Aerith alive at the end of this trilogy, that doesn't jive with who she is as a character, nor does it really jive with the theme of life, loss, grief, and acceptance. That's just how I view it. So that's kind of how I view the whole ending situation, is essentially an amalgamation of everything. So it'll have some of those Advent Children elements. It might have elements of the original FF7's ending, but the devs have said they want a proper, definitive ending, and one ending at that. So at the end of the day, it could be one real big, beautiful story about grief and grieving the loss of something or someone, but learning to accept it and learning to be okay for the players and for the characters. Now up next, Hamaguchi talks about a scene within Revelation that has made him cry. And this is coming to us from omelet.com.br, summarized by Genki. He says, "There's this scene that's quite essential to the story of FF7, where Cloud goes into a moment of introspection and discovers his identity and how it fits with Zack and Aerith. I think the way we portrayed that in Revelation turned out very well, and we're eager for fans to see it. I've finished Revelation about 40 times, and every time that introspective scene with Cloud makes me cry." Seems pretty clear that he's talking about the Lifestream sequence, which we've known for a while now will be very different, and the fact that he straight up mentions Zack and Aerith lends itself to that being different. And we've known that since we played Rebirth. Tifa falls into the Lifestream, and she gets to relive sections of her childhood, and she learns that when she was a kid and she was in danger, Cloud never left her side. He was actually there to try and help her out. Afterwards, in present day, Cloud and Tifa then have a reconciliation with one another, and they learn to trust one another, and their bond becomes stronger. That's stuff that all initially happens originally within the Lifestream. So that's something that's completely new. Like, that huge section of that sequence has already taken place. Another big wrench in the plans, Cloud already remembers who Zack is. Now, he doesn't have a clear picture on the relationship that he had with Zack and what exactly went down in Nibelheim, but he remembers him. Another big revelation from that Lifestream sequence. So it's pretty clear the Lifestream sequence this time around is going to be different, potentially much more heartbreaking. And I say that because one of the criticisms I see a lot of Rebirth, and it's a valid criticism, is that they butchered Aerith's death, right? It's a pivotal, important moment from the original game, and the developers ruined it at the end of Rebirth by doing it the way that they did it, which has some people saying that the developers don't understand the story, that they don't understand how important that is, and that they've ruined the game. You're allowed to feel that way. Maybe wait until the end of the trilogy to fully judge it. But for me, I've covered a lot of interviews over the years with the developers. They're all hardcore fans of the original game, and they understand how important a lot of the moments in that story are, specifically the death of Aerith, which leads me to believe, and maybe I'm being naive here, but I don't think the developers would choose to depict Aerith's death the way that they did in Rebirth, only to never address it ever again. And I think when it comes to that sequence in depicting Aerith, I think that's the moment that they will show her death in full. How it affected the entire party from beginning to end. Her death, Cloud holding her, them fighting off Sephiroth and Jenova, and eventually burying her will be played in full. And I believe that because Cloud, who has not been well throughout this entire trilogy, has been blocking a lot of stuff out. He's clearly up in space. And you see that in the end credits. There are certain moments from Cloud's perspective that just are not shown. It's a complete black spot. So when Cloud eventually recovers his identity, he'll learn the truth of who Zack actually was, and he'll see the truth about what happened with Aerith in full. And that's when us as the player will also experience. Again, it's very meta because we're seeing the story through Cloud's eyes. So when things get revealed to him, it'll be revealed to us too, which could lead to Cloud having a moment with Aerith where she tells him like, dude, none of this is your fault. What matters is that you tried. And that can help Cloud hopefully have an Advent Children moment where he allows to let go of the stuff that's weighing him down. That's one of my favorite things about Advent Children. I love that movie. The writing isn't always great. How they depict some of the characters, not always great, but Cloud's recovery I think is beautifully done. When he comes back to the city of Edge to help the party fight Bahamut's sin, and he tells Tifa, I feel a little bit lighter. I think I've lost some weight. That hits me like a truck. As someone who has their own mental health struggles, to see a character like Cloud be burdened by all of that but eventually come to accept that it's okay is very inspiring. And then Cloud rejoins the fight, and you see one by one every person in the party literally and figuratively lifting Cloud up to accomplish his goal of stopping Bahamut and saving the city. And he gets that one final push. He's in Bahamut's blast and he's struggling. He's not sure if he's gonna make it. And who shows up? Aerith. She gives him that one final push to let him know he's capable of doing this. So I think that's what Hamaguchi's talking about, man. Just incorporating all of this stuff into the story. It's like now retroactively making sure it fits, putting things in different spots and incorporating the Advent Children stuff in a way where it can lead to Cloud recovering, in a way it can lead to an ending that is bittersweet, but more finite, more conclusive. and you will probably have a live stream sequence that is really long, but by the end of it, man, you're gonna need a whole box of tissues just to get through it. So that's pretty exciting. If Hamaguchi gets emotional watching it all those times, and he's a hardcore fan, I can't imagine what it's gonna do to me. I get emotional just thinking about it. I'm gonna be a mess playing through that sequence. I tell you what. And to end the video, we talk about a quote from Hamaguchi that sparked a little bit of controversy online and was honestly just completely taken out of context. And it has to do with what's been described as a bit of a crisis for RPG games, JRPG games, and the people that stream them, and whether or not people will actually want to play them. So Hamaguchi goes on to say, one thing RPGs like Final Fantasy need to be careful about today is the possibility that people might simply watch a stream and feel satisfied without ever playing the game for themselves. This is a bit of a crisis for the work itself, or rather, it's not something game creators can wholeheartedly celebrate. If people watch a stream and it makes them think, what would I do in that situation, or how would I experiment with that, then hopefully they'll be inspired to try it themselves. And Hamaguchi has, further clarified that he's in full support of streamers and content creators, which I think is important to keep in mind here. But when that quote came out, I saw a lot of people taking the angle of, oh, he's just saying this and other developers are saying this because they want an excuse for when their game fails. When their game doesn't sell well, they want to blame the consumers and the gamers and the streamers, which is not what he's saying at all. And to further drive this point home, I want to take a look at a quote from Shinji Mikami, legendary game developer, the brain behind Resident Evil, where he says something very similar. Now, take this with a grain of salt because this quote comes from Mikami, but through a Japanese comedian and YouTuber by the name of Aiko Kano. And he had a conversation with Mikami, so he's recalling a quote that Mikami himself said about this very similar situation. So he goes on to say, if viewers watch a playthrough of a game all the way to the end and are satisfied with just that, then it was only that good of a game. He explains further by saying, our job is to make games that leave people wanting to clear them with their own hands, even if they've watched someone else do it. So keep streaming. And I think those two quotes are very similar. They obviously take, somewhat different approaches to get to the same destination, but I think essentially what Hamaguchi is saying, what Shinji Mikami is saying is that it's not the fault of the content creator or the viewer. The onus is being placed on them. They themselves are placing that responsibility on themselves and the development team of, we need to create a game that not only has great storytelling and great characters, but gameplay to match. Something where you go, oh, I actually want to play this game now. You watch a streamer play and you're like, okay, that was cool, but I think I would have done something a little different. Or I would have approached this situation like this, or this game just looks incredibly fun to play. As developers, their goal is to create a game that fires on all cylinders, right? They want to take someone from being a passive viewer and turn them into an active player, someone who actually wants to engage with the game. So they're not blaming streamers or the people that watch them for low game sales or not playing a game and simply just watching it online. They're saying it's going to be up to us to be good enough to make a game that makes people want to actually go out and buy it. Because I think a lot of us have had similar situations. I've even had, games where it's like, I'd rather just watch somebody play it because I like the story and the characters, but I don't really feel inspired or motivated to play it. And then I've had other situations where I've watched a streamer play a game and I'm like, man, this looks really cool. The gameplay stuff looks awesome. I want to experience that myself. And then I go and play the game. So that is what they're saying. And because the internet's going to internet, that quote got taken out of context and people were giving Hamaguchi crap. But what he's saying is, again, essentially the onus is on them as the developers to create something so compelling that you don't want to just watch it, you want to actually play it, which is pretty cool. And that's something that Hamaguchi has, kind of been echoing for a long time now, is that he and his team want to be great game developers that create great experiences, and they're going to push themselves to do that. So with that being said, that is the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought on what we covered in today's video. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.